Well, welcome. How you doing this evening, Rich?
Hey, Guy. I'm doing fantastic. Just got done sweating, man, just walking in from the driveway. But other than that, it's hot here in Texas. But
Yeah.
what's going on in Florida?
Oh, saying a lot of rain, so it cools it down a little bit. But I'm excited tonight to do a subject that we do ever so often to get new people involved in dental sleep. Today's the day that hopefully we will change some of your all's ideas about what it means to practice dentistry and to get your practices involved and at least looking for patients who have airway problem, being cognizant of it, and hopefully get you down the path of starting to treat some of these patients. So, Rich, I think we should get going with it. You and I do a lot of lectures across the country, dozens of them a year. About every other weekend, one of us is speaking somewhere. And I know, at least personally, I start out most of my lectures with, let's everyone raise your hand who screens their patients, all the adult patients, for oral cancer. And, of course, everyone's hands go up, and we ask that you keep your hands up if you found someone with oral cancer last year. And most of the hands come down. Maybe a few stand up, and we ask if you keep asking how many found one oral cancer, two oral cancers. The most I ever found, and I've asked this to thousands and thousands of dental practices, is six. 6 patients with oral cancer in a whole year of time, which is a lot, obviously, and it's important. And then we ask them, well, why do you do that? Why do you screen your patients for oral cancer? There's a lot of reasons that come up. What do you think number one is?
Uh, when I was in dental school, they told me to do it.
That's certainly in the top 1 or 2 or 3. It's the right thing to do. I don't want to get sued. It's in the
Yeah.
patient's mouth. All those things come up. And then we usually go to the next slide and we say, okay, let's do this. Everyone in here, let's raise your hands. Everyone who screens their patients for obstructive sleep apnea, and then most of the hands go down. And there's typically a few people, a few offices that do. And then we ask them, how many found somebody last year who had obstructive sleep apnea? And usually people just kind of laugh. The few dentists that have their hands up, they just chuckle because they understand where this is going, because it ends up, well, how many found more than one person? We end up going, how many found someone last week or last hour or last day that they did this? And of course, it's always a way higher number than the incidence of oral cancer. And it's because 1 in 5, pushing 1 in 4 adults now, Rich, are some the new things that I've seen. I think it's really pushing 1 in 4, but who cares? 1 in 4, 1 in 5, 25% of the adults have this very serious problem. And when we ask the dentist, why don't you do this? Usually get a dumbfounded look. I don't know, because I wasn't told to, right?
Yeah. Well, I mean, we know, Guy, that most new graduates, they're still not being taught anything about sleep apnea. So, I think this goes back to a couple of reasons. One, we weren't taught this. Number two, we're probably not comfortable talking about it. So that's what we want to get you all over that hump tonight. Tonight, in just an hour, we at least want you to start a conversation with your staff and everyone involved in your practice about, hey, how do we get involved in this? How do we do this? This is out there. It's as prevalent as ever. I know, Guy, you shared a slide with me the other day. It's like one of the biggest public health problems, of 2020 and beyond. So this is a big deal.
It is a big deal. And when you talk to the practices that why do you do it, well, they can give some of the same reasons because they feel like it's their job. But let me give you some real good reasons about it. I heard a statement, Rich, I don't think I've even told you this yet. I really liked it. I don't know where I read it, but it's so true. The end result of untreated obstructive sleep apnea is it will lead to a patient's death. If you leave it alone, it will help contribute to a patient's death. I'm going to use the right word that I read there. Undoubtedly, it may not be the only thing that they die of, but if you leave it alone, it's going to contribute to a person's demise. And we've got a few examples here. It's not picky about who it picks.
No, it's not.
Old, young, tall, thin, black, white, doesn't matter. All these things, it's going to, rich, not rich people, it's going to attack everyone the same. And we've got a couple examples here that you all probably heard of. Carrie Fisher. And you know what's unique about these examples, and Judge Scalia, is that they cited that they felt a causative factor in their death was sleep apnea, and in particular that they weren't treating their sleep apnea that particular night because the treatment they had been given for it, the CPAP, was not being utilized. So there's two examples, but you don't have to be 60 or 82. We've got a couple of 43-year-olds here that that the medical examiners felt that the sleep apnea in a large way contributed to their untimely and young death. So Amanda Peterson, Reggie White, 43 years old, and so it's not discriminating. Old, young, apnea can get anybody. And I have a real story about this, that when I go to the gym and I got introduced to the fire chief of Manatee County here in Florida where I live, and in shape guy, he does fitness competitions, and said hi to him all. Hey chief, hey doc, how you doing? Went on for years, and one day he comes up to me and says, hey doc, I hear you treat sleep apnea, and I have apnea, and I can't wear my CPAP, and I'd love to come see you. I said, sure. I literally went out to my car, got a card, said, come see me. I'll see you for a free consultation. Give me a call. You know what, Rich? He never came in because within a week he was dead. I mean, that's a true story. He was in his early 50s, and this is right out of the paper, so I didn't make this up. That he entered fitness competitions. He was a healthy guy, had surgery for this, and his untimely death was greatly attributed to obstructive sleep apnea. So oftentimes we talk about why you do things in your practice and why you do things in life. I think one of the reasons that Rich and I have spent the last 15 to 20 years really focusing on this is because the why here is real easy. It's real easy to get behind looking for your patients that have this problem, helping them understand it. So I like this guy. He was a patient of mine for many years, but he came in for restorative.
He looks weirdly happy about something, though. I don't know. You must have just the way he was. You must have just said, "Hey, I'll give you $100 if you let me take your picture."
He was that kind of guy. He enjoyed coming in. But if this is your patient, I know we have a lot of dentists on here and dental team members possibly, and it's your hygiene patient, your new patient Monday. Tomorrow, Wednesday, it comes in tomorrow morning. What are we going to see here? What's our job here? I think one of the things that we didn't key on when those earlier conversations we just had was why do we do the oral cancer? Because it's our job. And is our job just to look at this guy's smile and to whiten his teeth and to look for crown lengthening and curvus spee and possible periodontal disease and missing teeth and bruxism, all the things you might see? Well, I think it might be our job to see if he has a problem that may be contributing to a lot of his oral problems, and at the same time might lead to some health concerns that he could certainly avoid if someone would take the time. And the timing on this is really changing. Rich, we've been preaching this for 15 years now, probably. At least. And I think the ADA, our good friend Steve Carsonson, I know, is on that board, and they're really getting more involved. And a lot of you are ADA members, and ADA sets a lot of the standards of care as we go throughout changes in dentistry. And so what does the ADA say? Well, as of a few years ago, as almost 2 years ago, they say you should be doing this. You should be looking at, I'll back up again, this guy to see if maybe he has some airway problems that you could help him identify and possibly treat. I mean, you can read the fine print here, but I think that covers it. Just to reemphasize that, the ADA says it's our job to be talking to these people about these problems. Isn't that how you started it out, Rich, that we got to feel comfortable doing this?
Yeah, and that's almost 2 years ago, guys. So the writing on the wall out there is that we will be required to do this before long, and it will be the standard of care. So don't be reactive. We like to be proactive in everything that we do, and we like to try to stay one step ahead of the curve. So we know this is coming. So get buckled down and learn something about it, and do what you can to start helping your patients.
Right. I see some questions coming in here. We will get to all the questions tonight. We have our whole DS3 team answering them as we go along. There's other questions coming in that if they don't get to them, we will address. So keep typing them in with a larger groups we usually get on these webinars, we usually keep the mics off, but keep the questions in the question box, and Rich and I will stay on here till we get them all answered. One of the things, when I teach these courses and you teach these courses, Rich, I think one of the biggest objections people come up to me is, well, yeah, but I'm a dentist. I need to focus on teeth. And well, I've even heard that maybe these devices can hurt teeth at times. And, I want to stay in my little comfort zone. And so they kind of are feeling like, there's a battle between, am I supposed to save teeth or save lives? And the short answer on that is, if you understand the airway and the impact that it has, how it has to do with a bruxism, what it has to do with the other medical problems that it can cause that can affect the dentition and the body as a whole, and we help address those through diagnosis and treatment, whether it be CPAP or dental devices, your restorative treatment will be impacted in a positive direction most of the time. And not knowing about this, I look back and some of the biggest challenges I had in dentistry was because I didn't put these together. And some of my cases that I had troubles with, whether they were failing for various reasons. And if I just taken the time and known enough to look at the airway and put that piece of the puzzle, that was the piece of the puzzle that was missing. So you really can do both. You don't have to choose. I think there's a lot of confusion on that, especially people who are new to dental sleep, which is what we're the target of who we're speaking with today.
Yeah, and we'll talk about, the some of your concerns, as you think about doing this. Can the bite change? Can the jaw joint hurt? Can it do this? Can it do that? And I think, Guy, you have to remember to keep this in perspective. We don't need our teeth to live. Most of us probably need our teeth to procreate, because we'll not get there if we don't have teeth. But, it certainly increases the quality of life, but you got to have oxygen, and as you guys sit there and you learn more about this, we see more and more dentists that are kind of getting caught by the bug here, so to speak. And I think that has something to do, Guy, with that meaningful work part of that you talked about before, where, we love helping get rid of an abscess and getting a patient out of pain. And we should like that. There's nothing wrong with that. That's a meaningful part of fulfilling part of our job as dentists, but this can trump, any and all of that. And you have to make a decision. You don't have to make a decision tonight about how you're going to deal with this, but you eventually will have to make a decision to do this, or at least to recognize it and refer them to a dentist in your neck of the woods who does do this. And there's nothing wrong with either one of those.
Yeah, I think to reiterate that's a real good point you made. We and the ADA, so back to their statement, don't say every dentist has to be involved in dental sleep treatment, but we all as dentists got to get our heads out of the sand and start looking for patients who have potential problems, help them get diagnosed as to whether they do or don't have a problem. And if that's as far as you want to go, that's fine. But at the very least, you need to be doing this in your practice. You're
still doing a big favor, Guy, to your patients that you help find that out in. You'll have them come back and say, oh my gosh, you saved my life. Right. And those people will refer patients to you as well. So it's still, no matter how you look at it, it's a good thing.
You've got to be involved in at least the beginning of it. And hopefully you'll realize with some effort, this can add a part to your practice that can just be more rewarding from a patient satisfaction, personal satisfaction, and financial satisfaction point of view than anything else you can do. So stick with us. We're going to just go into a couple brief introductions, and we're going to get into really at a high level what you need to do if you want to get involved in dental sleep and what those steps are. This slide basically is who Rich and I are. We've known each other for, 15 years now, probably 12 years, something like that. We both got into dental sleep separately, but then we met and decided to join forces together to help bring more dentists into the dental sleep medicine world. We've treated thousands of patients. Rich, I know his practice is busier than mine. He does, I would say you have the busiest dental sleep practice in the country, but certainly in the running.
I look like it, don't I?
No comment.
I
No
used to have a lot of
comment.
hair.
Because then you'll start picking on me. But we've been doing it a long time. We don't know everything, but we know a lot of what to do and most of what not to do. So we talk on a lot of different subjects. We work with groups that we know will help our dentists that we work with succeed. Dental Services Group, DSG, we've been working with for years. What a great company. I mean, they do the 4 devices that we're going to talk about in one of our upcoming webinars that we do on the vast majority of our patients. So one thing I like about their lab, just right off the bat, is that they do the devices that we do. But the other is that, it's a solid lab. It's been around a long time. They have many offices or facilities rather throughout the country. So even though it's a big lab, it has the local lab feel. I know I worked here in my restorative practice. I stole my restorative practice about 6 years ago, I guess it is now. But in my restorative practice, I worked with DSG because they are a full service lab. And Dave Jensen, who's with DSG, I worked with him for many years through DSG. And I felt like I had my local guy who cared about every case, but I also had all the vast resources of the large lab that DSG provides. So can't say enough nice things about their services. They do a lot of other things. Rich and I don't do these things now, but I used to in my practice. So you can utilize them for that as well. But when it comes to sleep, they do the 4 devices, and I would say 99% of my patients, maybe it's pushing 100, get one of these 4 devices. There's really rare occasions, but they do the TAP, they do the SomnoMed appliances, which are both the dorsal and the herps, EMAs, and then the latest, greatest, newest Panthera. A lot of people call that the DSAT. I think that stands for Digital Sleep Apnea Device, but it's a 3D printed device that is our go-to for the big time bruxers. So if you want to know more about these devices, which is always a big question, we'll tell you, but not tonight. We'll tell you in our upcoming webinar in September. I think, was it there, September 3rd? And then I saw a question about billing coming in that someone's answering. Lisa from our billing team is answering that, but we'll get into a whole hour of billing. These are our 2 most popular subjects, and so we'll be addressing those in the 2 upcoming Dental Sleep Solutions and DSG webinars. So we'll answer those questions, but you got to. Not tonight.
That's a month away. Yeah, 4 weeks away.
Right. We're also doing some courses coming up in the fall here with DSG. These courses, every time I go through this, Rich cringes because it's the best deal going. Not only are you going to get great education by dentists who are doing a lot of this, they're 2-day courses. The dentist can come. You can bring a team member. It's just less than $1,000. You get a sleep study, a dental device, and 2 days of dental sleep education that are focused on implementation. You will leave with systems on how to do this. My personal promise to you. We have great reputation as far as dentists coming and saying these courses really taught us how to do this. And if you want a discount on that, if that's not good enough for you, just type in course, and you don't have to put which one necessarily tonight if you don't know. And it'll save you $200. So it's only $795 if you type in course, and you can see the 3 dates: Grand Rapids, Kansas City, and Clearwater. We also have a medical. Those are the what we call GPS courses. Then we have a medical billing course here in Florida. That's a full day of medical billing taught by Lisa Hertz from our 4-pillar medical billing company, and then our symposium is in the beginning of next year in February, which is a 2-day huge group of speakers from all over the country coming to that. So type in course again. Here's about the medical billing. Oh, look, they're giving you a discount on this too. I didn't even know that slide said that. So you type in billing, you save $50 on this course that's going to be great here in Bradenton, Florida at the Bradenton Yacht Club coming up in a couple of months. And here's the symposium. Look at those speakers, man. For those might be lost, I think, Rich, on some of the group on here, if these are all new dentists to dental sleep, but if you want to do a little bit of research, take a screenshot of this, pull out your phone and take a picture of that. You will find those are the leaders in dental sleep, and you can see them all in one spot for around $600 if you're the dentist, a little bit less than that as a team member.
Yeah, and you get to spend a few days in Florida, in the wintertime. So especially for you Yankees out there, that's and those rooms sell out. That whole symposium will sell out. We've sold out 3 years in a row, so there's no reason to think it won't this year as well. So get your plans in early. But this is what we do, at Dental Sleep Solutions. We provide education through coaching, the software and support, and so that you can screen your patients and get them treated and tested and billing. And there's lots of things that go on here, and that's why Guy and I started this company almost a decade ago now, was just to help dentists do this. And we do this all the time.
And if you have just a concern you want, or you want to learn more about what we do, just type in consultation or consult, and one of our DS3 members, team members, will get with you on the phone. They'll answer your questions. If it's just a challenge you have, you can utilize them for some free information. And if you want to know more about what we want to do, we can talk to you about that. So just type in consult or consultation at any time tonight. And I think nearing the end of the housekeeping here, you do get CE credit for this. You should get a certificate within the next 48 hours. Kelly, our marketing director, is phenomenal. She usually has it much quicker than that. But if you don't have it within 48 hours, then by all means, check with us after you check your spam filter to make sure it didn't go in there, because it should automatically go to the email you registered on. All right. Well, Rich, we're going to talk really about, we met each other about this time, maybe a little bit before, and we probably a little bit before, and the challenges in dental sleep were really huge until, what is this, 13 years ago now, 2006, the American Academy of Sleep Medicine. So that's the physicians that treat sleep apnea. They came together, and I had the date here, 2006, and they decided that what they were doing for sleep apnea, which was CPAP and then surgery, if the CPAP didn't work, wasn't getting it done. Many people were still being untreated, and they looked at studies and decided that, wow, dental devices work well, and they changed the parameters to this. What'd you tell me you called that, Rich, something I forgot now. The day the ground shook or something for dental sleep, maybe is what.
Something like that.
Something what he said.
Yeah, and can you hear me okay, Guy?
Yeah, I hear you fine. I'm just talking too much. I'll be quiet for a moment.
We do. We talk about that. For those of you getting into this now, it really is easier, than it used to be. A long time ago, when Guy and I first started, there wasn't a code to use for a dental device. Insurance didn't pay for it. We didn't even have a code. So lots of things have changed, in the last 10 years especially. And we're really picking up. We have a couple of slides in here that talk about, where we think the market is going and why we think it's a good idea. But the research is out there. It's very clear that these dental devices do work pretty well most of the time, and it's okay to treat a lot of your patients this way.
Yeah, and the change was, instead of surgery, now anybody that has mild to moderate apnea, they can be given a dental device instead of a CPAP. Or if they have a CPAP and it doesn't work, now a dental device is the treatment of the option. And Rich told me he's going to do the snoring here. So we were playing with the audio on this earlier. Sorry, I don't think it's coming through. Can you hear it, Rich? Not really. Okay, well, this is why we're doing this. You can watch the guy breathing. He was snoring if you could hear the audio, and now look, he's quitting breathing. Well, he's got a little bit of air if you could hear the audio coming through. But look at his chest. He's trying to breathe, but nothing's happening. Do you think he may have a headache in the morning? Do you think that his body's going through a fair amount of stress? You think his blood pressure is spiking? And then you think about what's going to keep him from dying? He hasn't died yet. We've watched this a bunch. I don't think he's going to die. Is he? You didn't trick me. Okay, there you go. All right. He's breathing again. Rich is going to modify that video one day, and he's just going to croak right there. But okay, then he breathed again and takes some more breaths. So what I want you to see is he did not wake up. He was struggling for air, quit breathing, chest moving, heart pounding, blood pressure up, and then.
Yeah, and he didn't breathe for 35 seconds. and then it's
Yeah, and what
starting all over again.
and what do you? The one thing you taught me this a while back. The patient had to choose that night, not consciously, but subconsciously, his body chooses. Right? What do you tell your patients?
I say your brain, you know, when you go to sleep and you have a sleep apnea event like that, your brain has to decide, do I want sleep or do I want oxygen? And since you're still alive and you're sitting here, I'm going to assume it chooses oxygen every time. But even though you don't wake up, it disrupts your sleep staging. And we think that's why people who have sleep apnea are sleepy and tired. Now, not all patients who have sleep apnea are sleepy and tired, but there's a little more to it than that. But you see the slide here. You know, this is just a vicious little cycle. You know, I'm tired. I want to go to bed. So I lay down, I fall asleep, and, you know, our airway starts to narrow. You know, when we look at our airway, especially as we get older, the term we use for how squishy the airway is compliance. So as the airway becomes more compliant, it becomes squishier. I say, Guy, it's like, you know, the difference between a brand new hose and the hose that's out in my driveway for 10 years in the sun that I run over with my truck every day. That hose is squishier. You know, it doesn't take as much to squish it. And then, you know, as our airway starts to close, we snore, we make sound, we're increasing the resistance to that air moving. And if my airway closes all the way, you know, now I get an apnea where no air is moving at all. That's what we saw in that video, you know, where that guy, he's trying to breathe, but there's no air moving at all. We become hypoxic, and then our brain is going, man, I need some oxygen. I need some oxygen. You know, so it gives your pituitary gland a signal, gives you a little squirt of adrenaline. A little bit of adrenaline is good, Guy, when somebody breaks into the house and you have to fight them, you know. But other than that, it's not good. You know, we don't want this high sympathetic tone running in the background. And we think that that has to do with a lot of the physiologic negative things that happen from sleep apnea. But that adrenaline is now a smooth muscle activator, and your airway is a dilating muscle. So when your airway dilates, what you guys did not hear in that video was the guy was trying to breathe. You know, and then he gets his airway opens and he gets a couple of breaths, and then he snores 2 or 3 times, and then the whole thing starts all over again. So this happens over and over and over every night, you know, every hour, every night, every week, every month, every year. And it takes its toll after a while.
And 2 important things. That was a great description, since we didn't have and the sound effects were perfect. Thanks, Rich. But 2 important things here is he didn't know he was doing this. Most of the patients have no idea they're doing this because they don't wake up to consciousness. They just wake up the next morning and say, I don't feel as good as I used to 20 years ago, and they just live with it. Number 1. Number 2 is, again, 1 in 5 people have this problem, and most of them don't know they have it. At least 85% of them don't know they have it. So that's why you need to be involved with it. And it's just, you know, it's as simple as this. I like to show this to my patients and say, you know what this is, and of course they don't. But you as dentists, you look at this and you say, well, really, should I be involved in this? Maybe isn't this another doctor's problem? And my question to most dentists when they give me that question is, look at this slide. When this patient does this when he's asleep at night, what doctor should be looking for that? If it's not us, I mean, maybe an ENT, but how many people see ENTs? You know, the primary care, is that any more in the primary care's wheelhouse than it is in ours? I'll play it again. When this happens at night, most people don't know they're doing it. Their airway closes off. Is that, if they had cancer right here on this, would that be our problem? I think it would be. We should be looking for this. So the argument that we shouldn't be, you know, this is really not something I want to get involved in. The reason the ADA says we need to be involved in it is because it is in our wheelhouse. This is a oral anatomy problem that's happening at night when patients are asleep, and essentially no one's looking for it right now. It's so undiagnosed. And again, back to what we said earlier, if you do nothing else, get involved with screening the patients and starting to look for this problem and get them referred. I see some questions about sleep testing. We're going to address that at a high level in a little bit, and we'll get your questions answered for certain, even at a deeper level if that doesn't do it. So 85% of people don't know they have this problem. The lucky 15% that, hey, you've got this problem, and they go and they get tested. My God, you're that guy in the video. You're quitting breathing 5, 10, 15, 30 times an hour. What usually happens? Those at home can answer out loud. It's like Jeopardy, screaming at your TV, right? I don't know. Maybe I'm the only one who watches Jeopardy at home. But those of you that screaming at your TV probably said they get a CPAP, because that's pretty much 95+% of the time is what happens. If you have a friend or family who was lucky enough to know they have this problem, and hopefully they don't have it, but they have it, at least we want to know about it, ask them what kind of conversations they had. The vast majority of the time, they went to their doctor, someone was astute enough to get them sleep tested, they got sleep tested, and they go, here's your treatment. They don't say, here's other alternatives.
A lot of times, Guy, they don't even talk to a doctor.
Right.
They go get a sleep test, and then they come home, and somebody from the CPAP company calls them and says, hey, you need to come over and pick up your CPAP. What's a CPAP? Well, that's what the doctor prescribed for you. Yeah. So we've got to change this. We've got to change this. So we as dentists need to get out there. So part of the issue is we have to educate the physicians. That's all they learned in school. That's all they know. So we have to go out and start to change that one doctor at a time.
Yeah, and I think what I want to emphasize is the standard of care. I don't think we have it in this presentation, but there's 2015 practice parameters from the AASM out. And basically what they say is anyone who's diagnosed with apnea, they can have a CPAP certainly, or if they choose, they can have a dental device. Those are the two treatments for this serious medical disorder. It's not just CPAP and surgeries, and there's other things you can do as I throw them on the screen here. But the two first line of therapy treatments for anyone who has apnea are CPAP and dental devices. But in reality, most people are never given the option for the second one. And if the CPAP doesn't work, most of them just put it away and forget they ever had apnea and just try to ignore this problem. And in fact, they should be coming to the dentist to have this done. So the potential is huge for dentists. And I mean, CPAP works. We kind of beat up on CPAP at some times, but man, I refer people to CPAP all the time. My own mother has apnea, and due to her level of apnea and her medical complications with COPD, I had her try CPAP first. She couldn't wear it. She's wearing a dental device now every night. Thank goodness. You know, my mom, she's a little bit hard-headed, Richard. She's actually wearing the thing every night, and I feel good about that with her at her age 86, wearing the thing. So CPAP works. I think, what percentage of patients do you think even understand how this machine works? I don't know if I've ever asked you that.
What would I guess? Less than 1%? I would say it's 5% of the doc. I was going to say 5% of the doctors that prescribe it don't know how it works.
Patients just think it's like a oxygen or something. They don't even understand what it does. And so it's really not complicated. It's just a mask that goes on the nose, usually maybe the mouth too, and it blows the airway open. It's a positive airway pressure machine. The first ones were actually vacuum cleaners that they hook the hose up to the outside of it. I mean, if you want to go into a long story, which we don't have time for, but it really is just you get a seal and it blows the air, as you can see, and it keeps the airway from collapsing by blowing it open like a balloon. And it works wonderfully if the patient wears it. You know, if the patient doesn't wear it, like the judge and Amy Fisher, it's pretty ineffective when it's sitting beside you, unplugged in the drawer. So CPAP works vast majority of the time. The problem is they have to wear it, and compliance is a big issue. And I think we have the slide coming up in a little bit from the AASM where they're saying that 83% of the time the patients are not completely compliant with their CPAP. So when we look at the difference between dental devices and CPAP, dental devices work really well. Maybe on a per case basis, they're not as predictable at getting the airway totally open, but most patients will wear them. And again, there's all different kinds we can look at. These are the DSG devices. Again, that I saw another question come in for that. We will get into that in that next one. But I like this example, Rich. Is if you have a CPAP, and let's say it gets rid of all the apnea. I mean, it just blows that airway wide open. but the patient only wears it half the time, they're still having half the effects of the apnea. Does that seem fair?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, well, let's take a dental device, and let's say,
Let me get my calculator out and check your math.
I think it's pretty good. That's pretty simple math. It's much more complicated than I need a calculator. But let's say the dental device, reduces 70% of the apnea, which in most cases it actually does better than that. But we're being conservative here. But they wear it every night, which compliance is far higher of dental devices than the overall treatment effectiveness of dental devices is in this particular scenario is better. And so for years, what Rich and I were fighting was, CPAP works better because no one was paying attention to compliance. And I do think the tide shifted somewhat. There are more doctors paying attention to this, but again, as Rich said, we need your help, because when you look at the numbers, these are, I would say, our estimates. But what isn't our estimates is that less than 15% of the people who have apnea know they have it, 15% at best. And of those people, most of them don't wear their CPAP. So when you dwindle that down, 2 to 3% of the people who have obstructive sleep apnea are successfully treated. It's an epidemic. And the words I like to use, and I've not had anyone argue that this is not true, obstructive sleep apnea is the most significant undiagnosed, untreated medical disorder in our country. That's pretty bold. So it's undiagnosed, untreated medical disorder, serious medical disorder in our country. Nothing else that's this bad for you, that is this prevalent, that is so undertreated in our country. And we just all got our heads in the sand, or certainly not in our CPAPs, that's for sure. And we can affect this by helping with getting more people to know they have it. And then if you want to get involved with more patients, treat it with a treatment that they can tolerate, i.e. a dental device.
Yeah, and Frost and Sullivan, for those of you who don't know, is kind of a think tank about, people hire them usually to say, hey, where's the market going? Like somebody might have $100 million to invest, and they hire them about, hey, should I invest it in the dental sleep medicine market? And they do a in-depth study of this, and they look at where they think the market is going. And so a lot of brain power behind this guy, and a lot of people looking at this and doing some research, and they really think that we're just kind of at the start of that curve going up. So they're predicting, a 5x growth in a number of dental devices that are being made just over the next few years. So, we never use money as a motivator. We talk about it a little bit because we all have to make a living. We always talk about trying to do the right thing, put the patient's interest first, and you never go wrong and that kind of thing. But, things are changing, and they're going to continue to change. So when the 06 parameters came out, almost 10 years later, we came out with another update that this time was collaborated between the Dental Sleep Medicine Group, AADSM, and the American Academy of Sleep Medicine. And when you look at this stuff, it's not great for us as dentists. I think in some ways it was a step backwards, but in other ways it was. We're seeing that you do have to take into account compliance, and that's what this slide is about, I assume, Guy.
Yeah, I mean, it's saying that the data shows that up to 83% of the people are non-adherent to CPAP. And I think the take-home messages we have in blue, when we look at how much this reduces your health risk, or the words they use here, the mean disease alleviation calculation, oral appliances may be comparable to CPAP because of the effectiveness, the compliance ratio when you put those two together. And I don't feel it's a step back. It's just looking at it a little differently. And they basically put the onus on the patient to say, which device would you rather have? You want a CPAP? We think it's the better predictable treatment, but if you don't want that, then you should have a dental device. And that's what the practice parameters state. And we're happy with either one. We just want, first of all, to know that you have the problem, which that's the first problem. Again, 85% don't know they have it. And then if you have it, between these two treatments, something should be able to be done to help reduce your risk for all of this bad stuff. everything on your screen here, when I said that statement earlier, untreated obstructive sleep apnea will contribute to your death. It's because it contributes to all these things. Independently contributes to all the things that we don't have to read: heart attacks and diabetes and cancer and impotence. You just read all these things yourself. Does anybody want these things? And if you can reduce your risk notably, not just a little bit, but notably in many cases for these things by wearing a CPAP or by putting in a mouth guard that holds your jaw forward, what reasonable person would at least want to try to do that to prevent the things here on your screen? That's what makes this, it really makes it easy as a dentist to talk about, because when you look at dentistry, you get big amalgams and cracks, and it's like, well, is the tooth going to break? What's the worst case scenario? Well, tooth cracks. Worst case scenario is you end up being the sixth person we put in our next slideshow. We gave you 5 right there, one of which I knew. The next time you might be the person that ends up being shown here, because you don't have do-overs in this scenario. So, Richie, you came up with this a long time ago, and man, when we first started talking about this, is why should we do it? Why do we get involved in dental sleep? And these are 2 really strong reasons to do it.
Well, I truly believe, Guy, that most dentists out there want to do the right thing. I think some of us get in trouble financially and other things, and sometimes we overtreat. I think some of us get involved with some groups and some people, and we get a skewed idea about what we should be doing. But by and large, I truly believe that most dentists out there want to do the right thing, and this is the right thing to do. And as we touched on before, Guy, it's absolutely some of the most meaningful work that you will ever do, I believe.
Absolutely. And the other reason we should be involved, we mentioned, ENTs could do this, and other doctors could, maybe they should be involved too, or they should be involved. But we see more patients than they do. We have more intimate relationships with our patients. We see them more often. We know more about them. And we've known about apnea for about 40 years now. And the traditional model's been, if someone's suspected of having sleep disordered breathing, in other words, apnea or a form of apnea, and let's say there's 10 of those patients, we would say you've got to go to the sleep lab to have a sleep test. That was the model until a few years ago. Rich and I talked about this. I mean, you can do your math at home. How many do you think will actually go and spend the night in the sleep lab? Rich and I just said 5 at best. It's probably lower than that. How many would actually have apnea or a form of sleep disordered breathing? Well, most of them will, if you don't just test everybody. If you have a good screening system, most of the screenings that we might touch on briefly tonight, but if we do a screening webinar later, we can talk about them. They're all validated. If you have a high risk, you do a test, you're going to have an airway problem. How many will wear their CPAP half the time? Was it 4 hours a night, 5 nights a week, in order for Medicare to say you get to keep it? That's the guidelines. I think Rich and I decided.
That's the standard, which that would be like me saying, Guy, okay, if you just take your blood pressure medication every other day, that's okay.
Or brush your teeth every other day. That's fine. On alternating days, floss one day, brush the next. Maybe that'll be fine. Yeah, maybe it will be for some people. I don't know. But that 2 is what we put here. And how many wear it every night, all night long? 1. And again, this is our assessment on it, but I don't think we're very far off. Use your own math on this. But now
there's quite a few studies out there that substantiate a lot of that. I mean,
absolutely.
When we came up with those numbers, we didn't just pull them out of a hat. There's some stuff that goes on with that. But as dentists, we're trying to get you to start screening these people.
There's 10
of them.
Guy.
You're doing great.
I'll finish it up. So they come in your office. That's the guy we saw earlier today. And wow, you look like you may have airway problems due to your anatomy, due to other screening items that we'll talk about briefly. And we say you can take this little device home with you, size of your iPhone, or different models out there. You wear it for a night at home. How many of those patients will take it home for, even if they don't have insurance, a few $100s? We feel most of them will. And it's, again, our opinion, but we know that when we come in your offices as consultants. When I did this in my own office, I got the vast majority of my patients, even when people come in from TV ads that we have now, and they don't have a diagnosis, we get the vast majority of them to go ahead and get tested. Who wouldn't want to know for a few $100s to wear something at their house overnight to see if they may be choking to death and be the number 6 person on our list coming up? How many of them will have apnea. Most of them will, because again, we're screening the way in with validated tests or screeners rather. How many will wear the device half the time, 5 nights a week? Well, almost all of them for the first few months. They rarely just take this and throw it at us and say, I don't want this thing. They wear it. How many will wear it every night, all night long? I used to say this is my opinion, but there is data out there now showing compliance with the Dentistry chip that's pushing 90% compliance with dental devices. So we have a huge opportunity to change a system that isn't working as well, and it can be fun too. Rich, it's been a long time since you've done that, isn't it?
What are you doing there?
Well, it's been a long time for me too, it seems like now. That's me in my dental office. My assistant, Rebecca, sold my office about, 2013, so it was 6 years ago now. And, dentistry can be fun, but man, it can be tiring as well. It's a hard job. And sometimes you felt like this was the way I felt when I went to my office every day. And when I first started doing dental sleep in my practice, I started a satellite office down in Sarasota, and we started going there one day a week. And one day a week, it was Wednesdays. On Wednesdays, I'd be like, man, Tuesday night, tonight I'd be out having dinner, having a glass of wine, going, man, I got nothing to stress about tomorrow because I'm going to a sleep practice. And it really can be a whole lot less stress, not without stress, but less stress than dentistry. And it can be productive too. I mean, you can look at this here and you can see that, these are the times that my time in my schedule back when I was doing my restorative practice. Black lines mean I don't have any time. They didn't give me time to go to the bathroom, but we had a pretty productive day. We're pretty happy doing $7,000, $8,000. I don't know what the amount was. Here's the same amount of production back when we looked at this years ago. And look at all the spare time I have, because this can be delegated. My son got braces on Monday. And a good friend of mine, Dr. Morris, I don't know if he's on here tonight. Thank you for taking good care of him. But, he didn't see a whole lot of Dr. Morris because he was able to delegate that to his very qualified team. And I don't blame him for doing it that way. You can do that in dental sleep because a lot of this can be delegated, and that's why it can be financially very rewarding.
But like we talked about before, there's some moving parts. So we don't want to scare you away from doing this, but we want you to have a very realistic idea about what you're getting into, and it's like a lot of things. If just one part of that is broken, then the process and the protocol for how this happens, it just falls apart. Yeah, we had a question earlier, Guy, about, hey, this dentist is screening and he finds a patient and he refers him to a sleep doc. And it takes like 2 or 3 months for the patient to get in. It's just crazy. So, that would be like, if I'm the salesman at the TV place, Guy, and you come in and you go, hey, I really want to buy that big screen TV. And I go, well, why don't you go home and talk to your wife about it? You forget, and patients forget, and they lose that sense of urgency, especially with a disease that is insidious in its very nature about, how it attacks us slowly, but persistently, all of these physiologic systems. So, yeah, we got to have some kind of protocols in place for how we do this in some systems. So we try to break this down to make it as simple as we can make it for you and your staff. And we try to make it within a protocol or a system that makes it easy to implement. Because we know, after going to lots of continuing ed ourselves over the years, haven't we, Guy?
Yes.
That if we don't make it simple and we don't make it in a system where you can do that. So, in a nutshell, we call these the 4 pillars. So as you think about doing this in your practice, or you've started to do it and you might want to tweak it a little bit, we've spent quite a bit of time about, talking about how we screen these people and why it's important and how many people are out there, that have this problem. And some of the questions that are coming back, Guy, are about, hey, how do we get them sleep tested? I refer them to the sleep doc and it takes 3 months. So we'll talk about different ways that we can do that. And then, of course, we're going to start to treat them. And we have to get paid for that. So we call these the 4 pillars. And these are all things that you have to be very good at in order to succeed.
But don't let them scare you, because we have systems to do it. each of these. We'll kind of go through these briefly and be finished near 9 o'clock, but stick around. We do have a special offer from DSG too.
Right.
I think it's worth sticking for. I forgot to mention early, but again, we should be finished near 9, and then we'll stay on answering any questions. But you do need a system to screen your patients. 1 in 5, pushing 1 in 4 adults has this problem. You can do a lot of things, but if you don't believe anything Rich and I are saying, and you think, I just want to test the water, then go back and ask your patients these 3 questions. You probably already have the bottom one there on your health history. And if your patients have any one of these 3, they're sleepy during the day, they snore, or they have hypertension, they're at high risk, or at least moderately to high risk, depending on how many of those they have, for airway problems. And I'll bet you're going to find a handful of charts in 1 week's time just by asking those questions. If you want to get a little more involved, here's what we call our red flags: everything from high blood pressure to stroke, diabetes, obesity. We will be doing in the future, we do it every so often, a webinar on just screening and testing. It's a whole hour. So, we don't, this is a high level overview, but you need a system in place to look for patients who have these problems. Now, good news is we have a system we put together. We have a DS3 screening application in part of our system. It's a cloud-based system. You just hand the patient this tablet. They answer a few questions on the tablet, and if they're at high risk, you're going to get a thing like this on their tablet when they're finished, and the patients are going to say, what does this mean? And we can coach you on how you talk to them, why they failed the test, what all that means. And the bottom line is we need a quick way to say this person's at risk for apnea, and then we've got to have a discussion with them about the next step, which is being tested. I saw Rich some other questions about testing. I would say this is one of the areas that has most changed for the better of the patients, the dentists, the doctors, across the board. That we used to have to do the thing here on the left side of your screen as you're looking at it. They had to go to the sleep lab. And now, as of when, 2007-ish, 8, it became accepted and paid for by insurances to be tested at home. And I would say that's one of the biggest hurdles that we had before that went from way up here to a lot shorter than what we have now. So I think one of the arguments we get is, well, I think an in-lab test, that PSG stands for polysomnogram, in case you don't know what that means. People think that's a better test, and in my opinion, it's really not. It's a more accurate test, but you're not sleeping as well because you're in the sleep lab and you've got all stuff wired up to you. And if you don't sleep well, what happens? You don't have as much apnea because you don't get to those deep stages where your airway collapses. Now, a home sleep test at times may be considered less accurate, although that's argued that that's really not even true either. So a lot of the newer equipment will argue that it's not even less accurate. But even if it was, you're sleeping more, better, and that trumps or at least equalizes out. So I don't feel.
Plus, you're in your own bed, Guy.
And you'll do it.
Yeah, and yeah, that's the biggest thing. You'll do it.
Yeah.
There are studies out there that say, hey, Guy, you snore and you have high blood pressure, you need to get a sleep test. Well, I'm not doing it. I'm not going to one of those sleep labs. My buddy did that, and he was in this room next to this guy that snored so loud he never even could sleep. He ended up going home at 3 o'clock in the morning. I mean, right. You're absolutely right about that. And you know what? A lot of patients, what helps a lot of patients decide, Guy, about doing this or not is, well, how much does it cost? What does my insurance cover? And what happened when Medicare did this, and Blue Cross Blue Shield, when they started changing, instead of in lab, we're going to start paying for home sleep testing. And, they're seeing more patients do it, and then the insurance companies are saving money, and hopefully they pass that on to us. That's a debate for another night.
But more people are getting home sleep tests now. It's well accepted. There are ways to do this in your own office. Again, this is half hour of another webinar in and of itself, but at a high level, depending on your state laws, depending on the insurance, you may be able to buy your own device, hand it to the patient. The patients can be tested. Then you have to have a physician read that to give you a diagnosis. We as dentists cannot, will not, shall not make diagnosis, but we will be able to hand them equipment to get the data to have a physician make the diagnosis. There's companies you can use that you can order the test. They mail them to the patients. They get the test back. They have physicians read it and they give you a diagnosis. And then once not debated is anybody, you can certainly work with your local physicians or sleep physicians, primary cares, and get them to help implement these tests. And again, I know there's a lot of questions I saw on here about that. We make this a little easier in DS3, our system. We actually have a way of ordering the tests right through our software. The test is shipped to the patients. The patients wear the test for a couple of nights, and then they ship it back to the company that reads them. You get a diagnosis and prescription, and all that information comes right back into our system. So we just make a process that's clunky a lot more streamlined. So bottom line is we got to have a plan to get them diagnosed. And the good news is it used to be one option, go to sleep lab. Now we have home sleep tests and various ways of getting them tested, all of which we utilize. And I do all those that I mentioned in my practice, and PSGs on a rare occasion as well. When it comes to treating, I don't think this is the biggest challenge for dentists at times. I mean, they think it is going into it, but what they realize
I would say 95% of dentists think this is going to be their biggest challenge, and it probably is for 5%.
Yeah, it is not. And we certainly can help break that down into the steps. And I think that's what we do well, is we help offices understand that this is not complicated, it's complex. It's not difficult, it's complex. There's a lot of little pieces, and we help you with systems for screening your patients. You need systems to get them tested. We just hit those at a high level. You need systems to get all the paperwork in that you need to get this covered by medical insurance. You need to do a specific kind of a dental sleep exam that we have systems for. We get the patient the device. There's dialogue that goes on with patients, expectations that are set with the patients. And then we need follow-up appointments, including follow-up testing. And then we need to see our patients maybe 3-6 months down the road, and then every year thereafter, because apnea gets worse with time. It's what we call a progressive disorder. So any one of these are not difficult. When you string them all together, some people get lost, but we have a great system to help with that. It's called DS3. It takes all this disorganization and puts it into a system that helps you just really know where you're going. And of course, we want to get paid, Rich. I think that's what we're talking about. What webinar after next?
Yeah, that is always has been our most attended webinar that we do. Usually we get 100, 200 people on these, and that one's 300, 400, 500 people sometimes. So it is a big deal, and it's a daunting experience. But again, if you break it down into small pieces, you don't have to reinvent the wheel. You just don't. You have to get verify benefits, and you have to do things again. We're going to talk for a whole hour about this in 2 months, on the 1st of October. But there are people out there who will do this for you. 4-pillar billing will do that. DS3 will do that. We have other partners from GoGo to Pristine to, there's lots of people out there, and they do this for a living, and they get paid a little bit to do it. And I would encourage you to get some help with this when you do that, at least until you figure out how to do it.
We'll give you a little glimpse into that webinar. It's going to start with, you need help to do this. Then we're going to tell you all the details in between, and it's going to end with, you need help to do this. But the good news is, I'll just give you a glimpse into the webinar, because that's what we're going to tell you. But we'll tell you the parts that go in, because certain things have to be done on your part. But again, we help make this seamless at DS3, whether you use us or another third-party biller. Once you understand the systems you need and your billing philosophy, you click a button, submits all the data to your third-party biller. They process the data. They contact the insurance company. They do all the heavy lifting and legwork, and then you get the results right back into our system. So we have absolutely streamed this as much as possible. There are some parts that have to be done by you and your team, but we coach you through those as well. We'll get into a lot of detail about that in one of our upcoming webinars. I have those dates coming up again in just a moment, in case you tuned in a little bit late here. I like what you said, Rich. This shouldn't be the reason you do this. Dental sleep, the why should not be, I want to make more money. If it is, then go to someone else besides us at Dental Sleep Solutions and DS3. But we do have to make a living, and it can be part of what makes this appealing. And there's really nothing you can do in your practice to get better return on your investment than dental sleep. Really, the sky's the limit. Rich and I have gone from practicing dentistry to just doing dental sleep because it's able to support our lives and our families from just that. Even if you just did one device a month, a week rather, you're pushing 6 figures adding, and that's after you pay for our services, after you pay for a third-party biller, and after you pay DSG for the lab case down there. I mean, you're pushing 6 figures. If you just did one a week, if you did one a month, you're pushing 20 grand that you're adding to your practice. So it's worth your time, worth your effort. It's worth the minimal fees that we charge to help you not recreate the wheel. If you want to know more again about what we do, back this up for a second, just type in consult. Someone will just meet with you. Not a high pressure thing at all, I promise you. If you have questions, specific questions that aren't answered tonight, ask them. Our team, that's all they do. They have years and years of dental sleep experience. Just type in consult. Someone will contact you, meet with you on the phone or go to meeting, whatever's better, and I'll go through your questions and talk to you about how we can really get your practice over whatever hurdles you have, because everyone's hurdles are different. And DSG is going to help out with that. This is a great offer. Anyone that attended this webinar, I clarified this, Rich, whether you're existing or not, existing or not, a client with DSG, you write down this, that you were on this webinar, and you get a $50 coupon towards your next sleep case, and you get this great kit with their guide. I have it printed out here myself. It's really good information. I was looking over it before we started tonight. I've looked at it in the past. A lot of the questions that came on, when would you not use, I think someone said the Panthera, get their guide, put in for this offer, and you can read what cases are contraindicated and when not to use it. And you got some posters, and that's a great offer from Dental Services Group. So thanks for putting that together. Just mention you can go to the website down here, dentalservices.net/DSG. Take a screenshot of that, pull out your phone, take a picture of it there if you want. And a couple of other things, we're going to finish the questions. If you want to consult with us, just type that in. Again, I can tell you we do these webinars all the time, and we do lots of consults. I've never had anybody say, gosh, that was a waste of my time talking to that group over there at DS3. They answered my questions. They helped me understand what my challenges were better and solutions to it. So give us a shout and let us get on the phone with you. If you want something for free, I know we've got articles to prepare in the next couple of weeks, Rich. Deadline's coming up. Once a quarter, we publish this Dental Sleep Medicine Insider magazine, and it costs you the total amount of nothing. It's free. So just sign up for it. It's got Rich writes an article. I usually do a video because I don't write as well as Rich does. They're practical people. We have Keith Thornton's contributed. John Rimmers has been in here who discovered sleep apnea. We have contributors from all over the country, and it's practical information. So just go there to dentalsleepinsider.com.
Great stuff.
And sign up, and you can actually see all the past issues too if you sign up. And again, here's our courses. If you missed earlier today, $9.95 were the 3 that we're doing that are the $9.95 is for the Grand Rapids, Kansas City, and Clearwater. The medical billing one's actually less, and so is the symposium. But those 3 courses, you get a dental device from DSG, you get a sleep test, and 2 days of CE. And if you type in course, you will get a $200 discount on the low price of $9.95, which is, I don't know anywhere better to get a dental device and a sleep test. That's cheaper than you can get with most insurance. So if you think you have apnea, sign up. There you go, right?
Yeah, it's a good way to get it treated. Awesome. Well, thank you, Guy, for all that great information. Thank you to our team, you guys that have been answering most of these questions. We didn't have a whole lot, Guy, but a couple of good ones.
Looking at them here now.
I don't know if we need to do anything else with that stuff. The one I want to touch on again a little bit, because they asked, was concerned about when you make that referral and it takes several weeks to get the patient in. So what I typed in there, Guy, I don't know if you read that or not, was you have to be careful about how you deal with that. If you only have one sleep doc in your town, then you have to be careful about how you deal with that. I would call him up, ask him if he wants to have a cup of coffee, ask him if you can take their office lunch one day, and just go, man, how do we work around this? I'm trying to tell these patients sleep apnea is a big deal, and we need to get you tested, and then they call you and it's like 2 months.
Right.
And just have an honest conversation, with just, I'm one of those kind of guys. I wear my emotions on my sleeve, and if I want to know something, I just ask you. And,
right.
and if you do it in a way where you asking questions, you don't go over there and say, my God, what's wrong with you? I refer a patient, you can't get him in for 7 weeks, but again, a lot of these guys, if he's a pulmonologist and he's really busy and he's got to go to the hospital, the guy might be working 20 hours a day already and he just doesn't have time to do it. So, but I did touch on, Guy, the primary care docs as well, because we're seeing a lot more primary care docs that are doing their own home sleep testing now. So
right.
just like we told you in DS3, we have where you can click a button and do a sleep test. Now we're just ordering the test, and that's right. Most dentists can do that. Check with your state board. There are a couple of states where the state board does not even want you as a dentist ordering a test. But most all of them you can, but check with your state board as a disclaimer, okay, because that changes. But a physician, a board certified sleep physician, is still interpreting that and making that diagnosis.
Absolutely.
That's what most primary care physicians want as well. So a lot of those primary care physicians will use the same type of services that we're talking about. A lot of them right. use the same companies that we use when we do that. And, I went to a primary care office, Guy, this was about a year ago, and I said, hey, what do you guys do for sleep testing? Oh, we refer to Dr. Smith down the road there. How long does it take him to get in? Oh, it takes about a month to do it. Well, if I could show you guys how to do home sleep testing here, and you could get it done within a week, and you don't have to even make the diagnosis, it's done by a board certified sleep physician, would you be interested?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, sure. Can we actually bill for something? Yeah, there's actually a code or two that you can bill for. That group of 7 doctors, Guy, referred me 100 patients in the next year.
Wow.
100 patients. And they were as frustrated as that dentist is who said this. I don't remember who that was, Dr. Moss, is about sending those patients there. So right. Again, there's multiple ways to do this, and you just have to figure out the best way. And I would just encourage you to speak freely with these physicians, and don't be afraid to go do lunch and learns and to do breakfast and have a cup of coffee and do those types of things.
Right. No, good points. Again, our next 2 webinars are on devices and medical billing, but if that's interesting, we get enough interest, we'll do another one on sleep testing, because we've done quite a few in the past and dive more into that. I think that's most. I saw one. Hello, Andrea. I hope you're doing well. She said hello. I hadn't seen you in a while. Glad that you joined on. Other than that, did we get all these?
She didn't say hi to me.
Oh,
kidding,
well. I think it was great. If you have more questions, here's how you get in touch with us. We want to be a resource for any dentists or dental team members who have challenges in dental sleep. That's why we get up every day. You're not bothering us. If you want to just call and ask us a question, set up a time to talk about your challenges, we will help you.
We'll do everything we can to help you.
We will. We'll show our value first, and if we're not the right fit for our services, we'll still help you. It's not our goal is just like when we see patients that come in and maybe they need a CPAP or something else. I'm just happy to help them, and that's the way that philosophy is carried over. Rich has the same philosophy in his practice that's carried over into the business that Rich and I created, which is DS3, and it will you will sense that when you get a hold of us. So if you want to get in touch with us, go ahead, type consult, or just reach out to us versus email. I think It's
And
9 after
you will
9.
get your CE.
Yeah.
Occasionally it will go to a spam folder, so make sure you check that. It takes a couple of days, so don't bug us for at least for a couple of days, and make sure you check your spam folder.
But if you don't find it, by all means, let us know. We're happy to provide it for you. All right. So hope to see you all again on next one, September 3rd. So, and that's about it. Well,
4
good
weeks
seeing
away.
you, Rich. I don't get to see enough of you except for in this little bitty box here. Glad to hear all's well in Texas. I hope everyone has a good night. Thanks for taking the time out of your lives to spend with us.
Thanks, guys. Have a good evening.
Bye-bye.